move on to another serious issue at the moment, and that is the situation with respect to Lebanon and Israel. The Daily Telegraph has been behaving not terribly correctly here.
Yes, I think a call should be made to Mariana Spring of BBC Verify to follow through on this story. Quite extraordinary, actually, from the Telegraph. And I just want to mention that this afternoon we're receiving reports of Israel claiming that it's making preemptive strikes on southern Lebanon. We can only assume that means preemptive, pre-invasion. It remains to be seen, of course, if Israel will actually carry through with the invasion, but it's very intense bombardment that is currently ongoing. So anyway, a few days ago, the Telegraph produced quite an extraordinary article making a claim. It had no byline. It's written anonymously. It's full of anonymous sources. Hezbollah stores missiles and explosives at Lebanon's main airport, whistleblowers claim. Of course, no mention of the fact that the US is bringing missiles and weapons into Lebanon via the same Rafik Hariri airport in Beirut. So what are they actually claiming? They're claiming that effectively Hezbollah is storing huge quantities of Iranian weapons, missiles, and explosives in the main civilian airport. They say that also at the airport is the AT-14 Cornet. Well, by the way, that's manufactured in Syria, and Syria really doesn't need to fly it into Beirut. It can be transported across border. The disclosures will raise fears that the Rafik Hariri airport, just 4 miles from the city center, could become a major military target. Well, you don't say. The fact that the Telegraph actually produced this article at this stage in the conflict between southern Lebanon and Israel is absolutely criminal, in my opinion. They then made the claim that a security source at the International Air Transport Association told the Telegraph, "We have been aware of this for years, but we are unable to do anything without international legal action. We are hand-tied to do what we'd really like, which is to close the airport and have all the weapons and explosives removed." Absolutely fake news, fake attribution of this citation. So let's have a look at what the IATA actually said in a statement to the National News Agency, which is basically the official Ministry of Information in Lebanon. The quote is completely false and misattributed. IATA has not made and will not make any comments on the situation at Beirut Airport. We've no involvement in the political or security situation in Lebanon and would never comment on such matters. We alerted the Telegraph to the error, and the newspaper has since updated the article, removing IATA's name. Well, yes, they did remove the section which mentioned IATA, but with absolutely no retraction, absolutely no explanation of why the article was not only altered in its text, but also in the headline too. Beirut airport bosses deny it's being used to store Hezbollah weapons. And what is particularly dishonest, if you go to the original URL and click on it, you arrive at the new article with no explanation, no retraction, no update, no apology. Lebanon's caretaker minister of Public Works and Transport, Ali Hamni, this is from Al Mayadeen, proclaimed that Beirut Airport has been subjected to disinformation for years, adding that instead of publishing a ridiculous and baseless report citing anonymous sources, the British Daily should have opted for checking in with the British Department of Transport, which conducted a field visit of the airport on January the 22nd, 2024. Incredible dereliction of journalistic ethics and duty by the Telegraph. Greg Carstrom, the Economist Middle East correspondent, I'd love to know the backstory of who at the Telegraph decided to publish something so transparent that no one, even our foreign staff, was willing to put their name to it. Lebanon's caretaker Minister of Information, Zaid Makari, accused the Telegraph's article in a post on X of contradicting the principles and ethics of journalism and called on all media outlets not only to denounce it, but also to expose the goals behind its publication in these circumstances, in particular, stressing that they are not innocent. I would agree with that. The Telegraph is complicit in any escalation that includes the bombing of a civilian airport in the center of Beirut. A diplomatic, this is translated from Arabic in Al-Akhbar, diplomatic and media tour of the airport facilities was immediately organized, and British Foreign Office staff in Beirut denied any collusion with the Telegraph and basically distanced themselves from the Telegraph, which is kind of interesting because we know that the Telegraph pretty much works hand in glove with intelligence agencies in the UK. So this was a quick report by actually a reporter from the National News Agency, so not affiliated to Hezbollah, during the visit to the airport.
Lebanon's transportation minister has called for an open tour of the Beirut International Airport after the British newspaper The Telegraph published an anonymously sourced and anonymously written article alleging that the Lebanese Hezbollah group is smuggling and stockpiling all manner of weapons in the international airport. So we've been walking from warehouse to warehouse, where, as you can see behind me, there are stockpiles of various boxes. We've even searched in some of the boxes, and so far there are no weapons to be found. The Telegraph article alleging all sorts of weapons in the civilian airport has caused critics to be concerned that the newspaper may be manufacturing consent for a potential Israeli strike on the airport, which Israel has done in the past. This comes at a time of heightened conflict, one might say already a war that has erupted between Israel and Hezbollah and its allied militias, although there are fears that it could be stoked into a larger all-out and maybe even regional war.
It's also interesting, the reaction from Israeli media, which of course is to bolster the story. This is just from two selections, the Times of Israel and Ynet, but you can see that they've immediately run with the story with the potential of using it as justification for bombing, I repeat, a civilian airport that has tens of thousands of people going through it every day. The Air Transport Union in Lebanon denied in a statement the Telegraph's report in which it claimed that Hezbollah stores missiles. The UTA called the Telegraph's unfounded claims mere illusions and lies aimed at endangering Beirut Airport, its civilian workers, as well as travelers to and from it, all of whom are civilians. So, I mean, I repeat again, this is extraordinarily criminal action by the Telegraph. And in fact, Lebanon is now talking about suing the Telegraph for damaging the reputation of Beirut's main airport. And in the text of the article, it talks about putting civilian lives at severe risk. And if we just remember, when we're talking about journalistic integrity, I just found this video by chance looking at Telegraph's Twitter page. Back in 2020, when they were running a COVID fake news campaign. And this is what they said in one of the videos that made up that campaign.
So there's a lot of misinformation out there. Some of it's produced by people who are intentionally seeking to mislead, some of it by people who are inadvertently misleading. The truth is, the best way to know if the information you're getting is right is if it comes from a credible source, for example, the NHS or the government, and it's being reported in a reputable news source, like the Telegraph.
Well, I mean, you know, Mike, I'm smiling, but honestly, this has kind of blown me away with how dishonest and downright criminal lack of reporting this is. That was a complete fantasy report put out to effectively, as I said, to provide the pretext for Israel to bomb a civilian airport. They should be hauled over the coals.
Yeah, I mean, in 2017, 2018, whenever it was, when you and I were running events, media and trial events, we were focusing on the British media's coverage of Syrian war, for example, and the types of tactics. But even in Syria, we didn't see this. This is well beyond anything they did even in other conflicts that we had an interest in.
Yeah, I mean, the Telegraph was also taking part in the vilification of the Syrian government, which effectively was a pretext for the murder of Syrian civilians, the occupation of their territory, and murderous attacks on the Syrian Arab army inside Syria and 13, coming up to 14 years, war, sanctions, etc. But yeah, I mean, this, even after their exposure as fraudulent media multiple times, and if you remember, they were actually running the headline that Saddam had moved his weapons of mass destruction into Syria. So this isn't the first time. That was back in 2004, at the same time that the BBC's Juliet Harkin, BBC Media in Action, was infiltrating Syrian society to basically encourage opposition. So, you know, these media outlets at some point have got to be held accountable for the role they've played in genocide in Gaza, but also in mass atrocities carried out by the UK regime globally.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Well, if we're talking about war drums and